Welcome everybody to the forum. Welcome to everyone who is joining us online. My name is Mike Kinman. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the rector here. And just really glad to have everyone here right now. It's a really important forum here this morning. I think what many of you have heard, I think just about everybody has heard, is that the current composition of the U.S. Supreme Court is putting abortion rights and reproductive health rights at risk across the country, that we are in danger of Roe v. Wade, if not being overturned, at least being seriously curtailed, and states having the right to significantly restrict, if not eliminate, access to abortion. And this will have a huge effect on us here in California. So we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what the legal situation is, and we're going to talk about what we can do about this. And we have two amazing people joining us to walk us through this conversation. We're thrilled to have with us Tricia Gray. Tricia is the Volunteer Engagement Coordinator at Access Reproductive Justice. She supports the Practical Support Volunteer Network by designing relevant and BIPOC-rooted trainings to immerse volunteers in understanding the complex nuances someone seeking support from Access Healthline may experience. She also engages volunteers throughout their tenure at Access by way of dance parties, coffee meet and greet, paint soirees, and other community-focused settings. That sounds like fun. She has a BA in psychology with an emphasis in community psychology from Cal Poly Pomona, and she leverages her experience of working in support of underrepresented communities in LA, such as the foster DCFS, juvenile justice, mental health, low-income, and immigrant communities, to apply culturally informed and person-centered trainings that speak to our callers' unique intersectional barriers and injustices faced in accessing reproductive health care. So, Tricia, welcome. It is great to have you here. Thank you. And then you may have heard of our other guest. Juliana Serrano is the Vice President of Advocacy and Equity at Planned Parenthood, Pasadena, and San Gabriel Valley. In this role, Juliana works to advance PPPSGV's mission through the strategic implementation of electoral and advocacy activities that promote policies favorable to Planned Parenthood at all levels of government. She creates and leads the vision and strategy for community affairs, government affairs, and advocacy work, and she also leads the organization's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives focused on partnerships for health equity in our community. And prior to joining Planned Parenthood, Juliana, of course, was the Senior Associate for Peace and Justice and the Office of Creative Connections at All Saints Church for more than 11 years. So welcome back, Juliana. So that is great. And so we're going to dive right into this. And Tricia, I want to turn to you because I know you've got some information for us. And really, Juliana, you sort of feel free to dive in, and maybe we can just have a conversation here. Can you sort of update us on the legal situation, the likely possible future of Roe, and also what the impact of overturning Roe or other possible judicial outcomes might be?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to share a little bit about what we do at Access. I'm kind of going to go out of order, Mike. I'll share a little bit about Access and how we're meeting the needs. And then towards the end, we'll get into really what we're looking at in terms of the landscape. So I'm going to just share my screen. So, as you know, my name is Tricia. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Volunteer Engagement Coordinator at Access Reproductive Justice. Access Reproductive Justice is an abortion state fund, the only one in California. So what we have are kind of different legs to our organization. These are what those legs are. In particular, one of our biggest legs of our organization is our bilingual English and Spanish health line. Essentially, we have a health line that is staffed by 2 people. We have a small but mighty team staffing and helping people in all of the state of California. And what I do is I recruit our Practical Support Volunteer Network. And what that looks like is volunteers that are assisting the callers that come into our health line with whatever needs that they have. All right. right, sorry. So these are Sasha and Michelle. These are the two folks who are on the health line. Our health line is from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday. We provide free, unbiased, and confidential information regarding reproductive health care. What our biggest, I would say, our biggest callers are looking for are support in acquiring an abortion. And so when they call us, by the time that they get to us, they've probably received a lot of different barriers, a lot of different no's. One of those being, you don't have medical insurance, and I'm just talking about in the state of California right now. We'll get to kind of what the impending barriers will be for other folks. But within the state of California, maybe they don't have Medi-Cal insurance, or they don't know how to get Medi-Cal insurance. They don't know if they qualify, or maybe based on their gestational age, they don't have a clinic close to them that would service them. And so now they're needing lodging, hotel lodging, or travel. Some people coming from Central California all the way down here to West LA. And so that's a big burden on folks who already may not have childcare in place, or may not have emergency funds or a fund set up for a rainy day. And due to the ongoing public health crisis, it's kind of put a wrench into everything in regards to how we support those callers too. So right now we're only supporting them with transportation and funding. And primarily why we're only providing that kind of support right now is because we lead with understanding that some of the communities that come to us may not feel comfortable with vaccinations. They may not even have adequate health care, maybe a primary care provider or anything like that. So it means a lot when they reach out to us that we just try to meet them where they're at. And so I'm only specifically talking right now in terms of Californians, but there is something else on the horizon, which is that, as Mike was saying, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, which it's looking that way, we're gonna see a big increase in folks needing help from all over. So I'm gonna show you this video. This is by the Guttmacher Institute, which kind of sheds light on what's happening and how these bans create a bigger barrier for people who are already marginalized. So as you can see right there, a majority of our callers that come to Access are in their 20s, low income. I'm not sure if you know what BIPOC is, but that means they are Black, Indigenous, people of color, and are insured under Medi-Cal, but just probably don't know how to access it or utilize it.
Abortion rights and access are in serious jeopardy. Since Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973, more than 1,330 state-level abortion restrictions have been enacted across the U.S. Restrictions are about control. They're designed to make abortion care harder to provide, obtain, and afford. Together, they form massive barriers between pregnant people and the care they want, need, and deserve. And these restrictions are ramping up. Almost half of them were enacted just in the last decade, and more restrictions were enacted in 2021 than ever before. Abortion restrictions hit some communities much harder than others, especially those already marginalized by healthcare systems. That includes people with low incomes, Black and brown people, people with disabilities, young people, and LGBTQ people. We deserve better. Congress must pass measures that would block many of these state-level restrictions and allow people to use health insurance, including Medicaid, to pay for abortion care. Learn more at guttmacher.org.
All right, so as that outlined, essentially these are the folks that are going
Abortion rights and access are in serious jeopardy.
So as I outlined, these are the most impacted people that these laws are affecting. So just to put this into perspective, if 100 restrictions were enacted in 2021, we already know that these are the same people that were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And so having more restrictions just means that these people are experiencing more barriers, more stress, more pain, more trials and tribulations to just accessing an equitable type of life. And that includes equitable healthcare access. So here's the nitty gritty. This is a really great visual from the Guttmacher Institute, which shows essentially what the landscape is looking like. So as the title says, if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, 26 states are certain or likely to ban abortion. So the white-colored states are those states that will be states where folks are probably traveling to. As you can see on the West Coast, things are looking good for us in terms of having solidarity and helping folks. But the Midwest, the South, I mean, if you just look at the list of the states, 26 states is a lot. And what we're planning to experience is possibly a 3,000% increase in California, being that California is an abortion freedom state, so to speak. I would say that it's not totally there yet. Most people don't know that in California, 50% of counties actually have no abortion clinics. And so people are still required to travel or live within high-income places, such as metropolitan areas like LA or San Francisco, San Diego, in order to get abortion care service. So there's impending barriers here already for Californians, and then we're looking at, we've got to create solidarity and community for our folks across the country too. So what I have in my perspective, I'm looking at how we can bring people together to support what we already know is inevitable and what's going to happen. I do want to speak more to how to get involved, but I also wanted to allow Juliana to step in to share a little bit about Planned Parenthood as well, so that's also one of our partners that we're working with to make sure that if a person is receiving an abortion, they have a ride home or they have lodging for when they can safely continue the procedure without having to, with having privacy and dignity and not having to be at home. Maybe sometimes with their families who maybe are not in support or are a little bit more of a barrier because they're maybe a single mom taking care of other kids at home. So I did want to open up the dialogue. I hope that was kind of informational. I also don't want to be a scare tactic kind of person. I think that these groups have been in survival mode forever. And I think that that's something that we can rely on their resilience and also just match them in with compassion. I don't want anyone to feel worried about what's on the landscape because we've been around for 30 years in terms of access to reproductive justice. We're not a new movement. We're doing this and we're doing this work, and so we just want to continue to bring people together.
Thank you. Juliana, can you just sort of add to that and talk more specifically about Planned Parenthood and what you are all doing to prepare for this? And also I'm interested in specifically, do we have any sort of information or sense of how this is going to play out in the Supreme Court? Are there specific cases that we're looking at?
So good morning, everyone. It's good to be back with you. Hi, Tricia. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
I want to give a shout out to Access Reproductive Justice and the work that they do. They are an incredible partner, and as Tricia said just very briefly, they are the only fund that does exactly what that they do in the state of California, which is huge. And they are a small but mighty crew, and so I just want to give them the credit that they merit for sure. And as inevitably I think people are thinking about how they can support this work moving forward, it would be remiss if I directed only attention to Planned Parenthood. We need to draw our attention and our financial support and our labor to access reproductive justice too. So thank you, Tricia, for all the work that you do to coordinate all that. Mike, in partnership with Access and a variety of other reproductive rights organizations and leaders, in October, something was created called the California Future of Abortion Council. The California Fab Council is what we're calling it. And really, it was upon the news after SB 8 passed and Texas and was enacted that, really I think the nation's attention was drawn to this issue of abortion rights being denied in our nation. And the state of California realized we have to do something to prepare because we are not going to stop being this freedom state, as our governor has declared for ourselves and several of our legislators have supported. So we started to get together to figure out, okay, what are the policies that we need to put into place in order to prepare ourselves for what will come? And that is, again, this influx, as Tricia mentioned, the 3,000% increase in abortions needed in the state of California. That's huge. That's a huge, huge number of folks that are going to be coming to us seeking the abortion services. And that's in addition to the current demand. Again, as was mentioned, there are already in the state of California barriers to accessing abortion. And so how do we meet Californians' needs? How do we meet people coming to us from outside of the state of California? We need to build the infrastructure for that. So after a period of all of these leaders from across the state coming together, we have made 45 policy recommendations to the state of California. And this is all about supporting funds to make sure that people needing abortion can pay for their abortion, can pay for the child care that they may need, maybe the hotel or the transportation that they may need in order to get their abortion service. This is about building up the workforce. I was just talking to the Whitsons about this fact that, you know, not a lot of people in medicine decide to become an abortion provider. How can we encourage more medical students and more people studying to be MAs and nurse practitioners to enter this particular field of sexual and reproductive health care and to be abortion providers, be part of a team to be abortion providers? So we need to build up that infrastructure. We need money and we need support from our state government in order to do that. So these 45 policy recommendations are significant. They're going to get us to where we need to be and probably still not be enough, because once we're living in it, right, we're probably going to discern that we have some more needs that are going to come our way and that for which we will need to ask our governor and our state legislature. But we've been really, really lucky that the governor has heard us. He stands with us. He already proposed a budget for the state that includes several of our recommendations, which is really, really good news, and it's a great start. And we need to continue to partner with him and legislators, again, in order to get our state prepared to meet this demand. And that connects to, I think, the second part of your question, Mike, about, you know, what can we expect? It's hard to say, and even the best political experts and constitutional law folks will say that they don't want to be in the business of predicting what the Supreme Court will do. But we do expect for abortion rights to be significantly taken away from Americans in some form or another. Whether it's an outright overturn of Roe, we are not sure. But they can also, in a very sophisticated manner, as you can imagine, erode the law to the point where, as Tricia mentioned, these 26 states across the nation will then be ready to go with outright bans in their states. And that means that women, non-binary persons, trans men, anyone needing an abortion will then have to either be forced into keeping their pregnancy, which has a variety of challenges in and of itself, or will then be put in this very challenging circumstance of finding out where they can get the abortion service that they need. And inevitably, that creates a lot of financial struggles and barriers to people accessing the care that they need and they deserve. So we are aware of what's coming. We are trying to prepare ourselves. We, at Planned Parenthood Pasadena San Gabriel Valley, we have 5 health centers in the area. We know that we can meet the increase should it be coming to us. We've already noted a little uptick already. But we are trying to make sure that we've got the workforce, we've got the buildings in place, we've got our appointment schedulers in place, that we've got support from funds like Access to be able to give people the accommodations and the transportation that they need to come to us. We're all working in partnership to meet the moment.
Tricia, anything else that you want to jump in and add to what Juliana said?
I think that was great, Juliana. I don't have anything else to add. I think you're right in talking about how we have to build the infrastructure, and that is what we're doing. And that's also why we're trying to really enhance the amount of people we can get within our community to support, because where this legislation is letting us down, we have community and grassroots people, and we can all come together. And so I think that's something which is beautiful that we are able to do even in the midst of the crisis that's at hand.
Yeah, thank you. So a couple things. First of all, for all of you who are watching us online, you can text in questions, and it's the same text number we use for prayer requests, and it's 910-TEXT-ASC, which is 910-839-8272, 910-839-8272. Another question I have really for both of you is, we think about a huge crush like this, a 3,000% increase. I know when you were here a couple months ago and you said that absolutely blew me away. And, my first sort of sense is, okay, well, that's just like a wave we have to endure, except the conservative majority on the Supreme Court is not an old majority. And so sort of two things. First is this, my first question is sort of, well, what is the long game in terms of getting back what we assume that we're going to be losing this year, and eventually getting to the point where something like Roe v. Wade is again the law of the land. But then also, how long a game does that need to be? And are we really talking about building semi-permanent structures that really have to last for decades until we get back to where we have been?
You want to take that, Tricia?
Yeah, I did want to touch on kind of Roe v. Wade being a bare minimum in terms of a constitutional right. What it does is it also is something that was enacted was the Hyde Amendment. And I think if what we can do is enforce a law or get a way to do away with the Hyde Amendment so that we can have strategic health care for all people.
Can you talk about what the Hyde Amendment is?
Oh, I'm sorry. So once Roe v. Wade was introduced, a lot of amendments and laws came in to try to weaken that law. So the Hyde Amendment essentially does not allow Medicaid to be utilized to pay for abortion care. So in California, we can change our Medi-Cal, which is our Medicaid insurance, to support people with abortion care, which is what we've done. But if that is not like a standard across all of the states, I think we're going to continue to see ways that we can limit and mitigate or minimize the amount of healthcare that people can access, especially the people that need the access to healthcare. So something I think that COVID-19 showed is that our healthcare infrastructure is not the greatest for people who are low income, for people who are Black and Indigenous, for undocumented people. Those communities were disproportionately impacted because they already don't have access to healthcare. So I think something that really needs to happen in terms of legislation is that there should be universal healthcare as a bare minimum constitutional right. And then from there, we can look at what within universal healthcare we can promote and help put more funding toward, in my opinion. And I mean, Juliana, I know you probably have some perspective on that.
Yeah, and I think that for a moment to not think about policy, I want to reflect on what's on my t-shirt, which says say abortion. And I think that's fundamentally the movement that we need to be working towards also, is destigmatizing abortion. The more that we can see abortion as basic health care for anyone who needs it, it is a safe procedure that people are entitled to receive when they want it. That's when I think we will have a shift. But because we live in a society that still stigmatizes abortion, still stigmatizes providers and people who want an abortion service, this is why we've got a Supreme Court that's on the brink of the decision that they're at, that we've got 26 states who are prepared to enact their own bans. I mean, it's all because we have created this narrative around abortion being evil and bad and wrong. And until we break that down, I think we will continue to experience challenges.
Yeah, well, so on that point, I remember the last time you were here, and we were beginning to talk about this and about care for people who are coming into the state seeking abortion. I made a comment, because you talk about people sort of sleeping in their cars afterwards, and I said, wow, that's something like you shouldn't do after an invasive procedure. And you're like, whoa, hold on. And so I realized there's a lot of things that I don't know about abortion and abortion services. What are some of the most common misunderstandings that you're both seeing about abortion that are fueling this stigmatization?
Well, I think that, as you mentioned, I think this idea that it is a dangerous procedure, when in reality it is far more dangerous to carry a child to term and to go through the delivery process than it is to go through an abortion procedure. Folks don't think that. They think it's like this horrific, gory, and it's not. I had the privilege, and I do say that with all that really means, the privilege of accompanying 5 women recently through their abortion procedure. It is a very sacred time and space, But trust me, this is a very natural, normal, very safe procedure, especially when it's at the hands of professionals, like those that are offered in our health centers. So it is not this thing. It happens very quickly. It's very safe. It's very effective, right? If people want to be unpregnant, the best way to get unpregnant is by getting an abortion, right? And here we are in this world again that has this narrative around it being like open heart surgery or something, and it's just really not the case. And that's when I'm speaking specifically to the surgical abortion. Over 50% of abortions in the United States happen by medication abortion, right? And so this is with a series of pills that a patient can take to their home and then, pass their pregnancy in the safety, the comfort of their own home. A lot of abortions happen that way. It's very safe. It's very effective. We need to be able to talk about this very normally.
Tricia, anything to jump in with that?
Yeah, I think something else that would surprise people is that a lot of our callers that come to our health line are, there's a sense of relief to get the help. So if you've gone through hoops, barriers, jumped through fire, when they come to us, there is a sense of relief of, I just need to get this help because now my pregnancy has gone on for a period of time, and that gestational age is critical to the type of care that they receive. So I think that another misconception about abortion is just that it's this gut-wrenching experience that maybe a person who doesn't have children has to experience. But a lot of people who seek abortions have already had children, and they know that they can't afford more and that they really need support. They don't have family support. They don't have childcare. They don't have a job where they can take off work for medical appointments. All of those things really impact a person's decision. And I think that that's the thing that they're dealing with when they come to us too, which is a misconception as well.
So you mentioned that more than 50% of abortions are are just from taking medication. Is there a sense that when these restrictions continue to be passed, and say Roe v. Wade gets gutted, I get medication in the mail. I mean, is it possible? Will it still be possible to send medication into some of these states that have permanently outlawed abortion? Do we even know?
Yeah, I think that's what's being explored, and Tricia probably knows a little bit more about that too. I think that this enters new territory for cross-state medication dispensing, right? And who is held liable, right? And so I know with medication abortion, there is a series of 2 pills, and it's really the second pill that's the abortifacient. And so if that is the pill that then, if one is consumed, let's say in our health center, and then the second is consumed at home, if that person consumes that prescription pill and has crossed the border, would our provider, would our agency still be liable, right? So there are legal experts, legal mind, and then specifically thinking about Texas's law, which was so egregious, right? Which puts everybody at liability. If you're an Uber driver driving someone to the right, that you could be sued. So this is what legal minds, legal experts are considering right now. And what are the ways we can efficiently and effectively dispense prescriptions in a way that doesn't create more challenges for providers, and then sort of squash our ability to help people in other states. Tricia, yeah.
I wanted to add just to that is there are different telehealth laws across different states as well. So what Juliana is mentioning is that, we might have a law in the state of California regarding telehealth that may not translate. And so that is a barrier as well. That's just, I think that's a nuance that legislators who are anti-abortion are smart and wise about, which is if we can minimize having telehealth, then we can minimize people utilizing medication abortion via Zoom with their provider. That's another way that they're able to put those abortion bans in place as well. So I think if we could have a standard of telehealth, as I was saying, or a standard of healthcare in the nation, things would really change for different procedures, especially like abortion care.
Right. Well, and we got some pretty smart people on the side of the angels too. So that's good. I want to get to questions from you all soon. Also reminding you can text in questions at 910-839-8272. 910-839-8272. Let's talk about what we can do Specifically, what can communities of faith do? What can All Saints Church do? How can we help? How can we be a part of something positive here?
I'll defer to you first, Tricia.
Well, definitely, this is a great start. So having open conversations, reducing stigma, letting folks know, bringing people into the awareness of what's happening. The next step is knowing that you can be a change factor, meaning you yourself don't have to feel upset about what's happening or powerless. You can become a volunteer, you can fundraise, you can donate, you can be a part of this change that needs to happen where maybe legislation is letting us down. And I think that that's the piece of the grassroots movements that we really can see change when we get our communities together. So one way, I have a couple of links. I'm not sure if I should email them to you, Mike, or share them with the group, but to either volunteer, submitting an interest form to
both.
volunteer
Share them with the group and email them, and we'll get them out.
Okay. And you can also donate, whether a one-time donation or monthly. And then we also have different fundraisers. We're repping up for a fundraiser called Fundathon coming up in the month of March. So I think there's 3 ways that people can get directly involved. Our helpline is staffed by staff, not volunteers, but we need volunteers. So LA County is a huge lift for us, meaning that it's one of our biggest counties of need in terms of our colors, and we're Bay Area based, but it's one of our biggest counties. So if we could get volunteers to provide rides from all over LA County, that would be awesome. Or to provide gas money or money for lodging or things like that, that would be awesome too. So I'll give those links to Mike, but I know that that's just what we can do here in terms of connecting with Access, and having these conversations is a great place to start too.
What's the website for Access Reproductive Justice?
Sure, it's accessrj.org.
accessrj.org. So you can certainly find more information there. Juliana, what can we do?
So also, I just will echo how important it is to be in a space of having conversations with family and friends and colleagues about this matter. I still encounter so many people who say to me, oh, Roe won't be overturned. That's not really going to happen, right? It's like, no, really, this is serious, right? And so engage people in conversation. Do what you can to be part of the movement to destigmatize abortion. If you have your own abortion story, if you feel comfortable sharing it, share your story. This is all part of what we need to do to just normalize this medical procedure. I would also just encourage you to give of what you can to Planned Parenthood. We are one of the nation's best known, most respected and trusted abortion provider. We continue to provide abortions in spite of all of these obstacles and will not stop doing that. And I'm so fortunate to be working in the state of California where we can be an abortion provider. I know some of our colleagues across the nation have a lot more challenges than we do, and we need the support to support them, to support those patients, to support Californians. And so the reality is that, as Tricia mentioned, with the nature of the sort of the business model of reimbursements with Medi-Cal, as we get Medi-Cal reimbursements for the patients we serve for abortion services, it really is not enough. And so this is where we really rely on the generosity of our supporters to help us meet that balance, right, each and every single year, so that we can provide those abortions to everybody who needs and wants them that comes our way. And then also there's just wonderful ways that you can be a source of support to all of our health center staff. And so we always encourage volunteers to do really fun things like, chalk up the driveway and the walkway of our health centers so that our providers and patients coming in know that they feel loved and supported. That's just one very small, simple gesture, but very, very powerful for those people coming into our health centers and for our providers who are in the work every day. Can you still hear me? Yeah? Okay. So volunteer, give money, and then also just to have my 501c4 hat on for a moment, because we do have, for Planned Parenthood Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley, we do have a C4 organization which is able to get into the electoral work. And I just want to remind you how important it is to put champions for sexual and reproductive health care and abortion access into office. And that is at all levels of government. This is not one of those issues anymore either, where folks say, oh, well, that's for the state to handle, or that's the federal government. We need champions right here at home. And I'm just so, so thankful that just about 2 weeks ago, the city of Pasadena passed a resolution to declare itself a city of reproductive freedom, that all those seeking reproductive health care would be welcome to receive it here. We need more cities to make those profound statements. You know, city council members, mayors, they'll say, oh, but what do we have to do? You have everything to do it. You can create a safe, welcoming space by making this declaration. And so we've got to get those champions in office who are willing to be big and bold and think even more creatively than we have the capacity to do right now as they enact policy from the local level all the way to the national level.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've got tons of questions and thoughts, but I really want to turn to you all. Are there questions and thoughts from over here? John.
Well, thank you again for being here and presenting us to the issues involved. I didn't hear a lot this time about the restrictions that, like Texas was imposing, where a citizen could prosecute. And while I've got a whole list of potential questions, what I'm curious about is, how is it that a person's abortion or need for abortion isn't protected under HIPAA? Because it would seem like if it was, people wouldn't have access to prosecuting somebody. And so how does that work?
So I would say that it is protected, and people still find very creative ways to get access to that information. I mean, you may have heard the stories of that final evening before SB 8 was enacted in Texas. There were protesters outside a health center in Texas that lined up their cars and were shining their bright lights into the health center so that they could see who was getting services and who was providing services. I mean, this is the extent to which people are willing to go to shame people who are providing abortions and who are getting abortions. And so there's a way in which, yes, in terms of the paperwork and legally there are these protections, but in many ways, you know, sort of the common person who really wants to, you know, shame again or legally take repercussions in the state of Texas against somebody who is supporting a patient or a patient themselves, they'll figure out the ways to do it.
Other questions? Clara.
Thank you, Tricia and Juliana. This is really great, the work that you're doing. I sort of have just a quick two-part question. The first part is what's being done in terms of in the Black and brown communities and in a lot of communities where abortion is a sin and you're going to hell if you have an abortion. And that's what's being preached. That's what's being, despite all the other, the access and whatnot, that's still a barrier. And for young people, particularly young people that have to face that and get that sort of that pressure, what's being done in terms of educating, in a sense, it's not an education, it's just, you know, you're fighting against that. So my question is, in terms of counseling these young women that despite all of that energy that says this is a sin, that this is their body, and also in a lot of these states where women have difficulties with pregnancy and they have early termination, that's considered abortion as well. And so I know that's a much bigger issue, but that is a big, that is a reason why a lot of young people that, and adults, older people, families don't seek the abortion right, because there's still a big push that this is a sin.
Yeah, Juliana and I are doing the Vulcan mind meld eye catch thing. Susan Russell, pronouns are she, her, and I had the privilege for what was it, Julianne, 6 years to be a member of the National Clergy Advocacy Board for Planned Parenthood. So I think part of my answer is, that's a brilliant, important question, I think, is to know that there are alternative narratives available, and that there are clergy and pastors who will stand with you and help you unpack your own theological narrative, give you alternative voices to say, good people of deep faith believe a lot of different things about a lot of different things, and this is one of them, but here's what we believe, and what it means to be a prayerfully pro-choice church since 89, which is our history. And so knowledge is power, knowing that those resources exist on the National Planned Parenthood website, or that you can call people like us to help direct, to give those who are struggling with not only their bodies and their medical choices, but their faith choices, that there are options and there are opportunities, and we want to be part of offering them.
And I would just add, and I'm sure Tricia has some experiences with this also in terms of the hotline work, but I know that by the time people come to us to schedule an appointment, or they're in our health center seeking the service, we make it very clear to them that we're not here to judge. We're not here to tell them that they're right or they're wrong, or their decision was too soon, or they arrived too late at their conclusion, or any of that. We are just there to support them and what they need and they want. And we do that with pleasure and with a lot of holiness around it. But we're not going to be in that space of talking about sin or good or bad. We just know that as providers, we have a service to provide them, and we can do that with dignity and respect, and we will do that to the best of our ability as people come our way. And so, I don't know, Tricia, you may encounter that a little bit as you're encountering folks on that hotline too.
Yeah, I would definitely say we don't ask any questions about their faith or their feelings. If anything, we ask if they need support, like emotionally, but that support could be about the barriers they were experiencing rather than the abortion itself. Mm-hmm. So maybe being a single mom, they need support. I think in terms of the question, I really think that it has to start in faith centers, in terms of with our clergy, and with maybe even in our own circles and Bible study and things like that. I feel like we have to be in a radical space of radical love. And if we can start that conversation in the faith places, I think it will spill out from those centers. Because I do know that, such as Planned Parenthood, they have like a community and education programs, and they work with students and they work with young people. But still, if those young people go back home, or they go back into their church or their faith center, and they're being hit with these statements, going against what, is their reproductive rights, they can feel stigmatized and they can feel ashamed. And I think that that's why it's important to have Planned Parenthoods back and have reproductive justice back in terms of in our faith centers, and really destigmatizing what this is.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, someone just texted in, and this kind of relates to that. I have friends who had abortions to save mothers' lives, end terrible suffering, and save families. These were prayerful, moral decisions. Why does no one talk about the moral reasons for abortion? Terrible suffering of an irreparably damaged fetus, to be precise. So it is including that, expanding the conversation. And really not ceding that ground. I wonder, there are progressive denominations, and certainly the Episcopal Church is not of one mind when it comes to abortion rights. But we do have a national denominational structure. Other churches have national denominational structures. One of the things I wonder about is, say if you're in a state, like I spent 20 years in St. Louis, Missouri, where abortion may be outlawed. How do we get the word out to people in those states when all they may hear is, no, it's now illegal, but actually, no, we can put you in. It almost is, I almost think about like the sanctuary networks that we have set up, that there can be a network and we can help get you to a place, and you'll have a place to stay, and you'll get the care and medical attention you need, and then we'll get you back home. Is there any effort to use denominational faiths like the Episcopal Church to set up those networks? And then also, I think about, we're a sanctuary church, and so we have a structure set up. If someone is being chased by ICE and they need sanctuary. We have a structure set up to give them housing and basic resources. Is that something that we could also get prepared to use for people coming into LA looking to get an abortion that's not legal where they are?
I wanted to just touch on, there is actually a great pilot that just happened in Texas where it was, they got 11 women to get their abortions out of the state after the 6-week ban. So they were able to travel to New Mexico, and that was led by a national network of abortion funds groups as well as clergy. So they were able to be a part of this big program, and well, getting 11 people pre-authorized in terms of their health care, and then getting them to travel by plane. But the clergy who were riding along with them through the plane ride and transporting them. And so I think that having awareness that that's happening is a great thing too, that we need to start to improve. And also having the same way that we're connected in terms of abortion funds, we're connected across the country. I think having clergy connected across the country in terms of reproductive justice, or just in terms of being radical movement leaders, protection against ICE, like you're mentioning, that would be great to have national networks of clergy across the country to do so. And then being community with them and being in conversation to see how they're doing that within their own states.
Anything to add,
Yes.
Julie?
Yes, all of that, yes.
So, any other, Carol?
My concern is the ramifications of when this, if this is overturned. And 50-some years ago, I was a brand new ER nurse in my early 20s, and they brought in a 15-year-old girl who had had a back alley abortion. It took her 16 agonizing hours to die. Her name was Sarah. I have never forgotten it. And I went on to continue in the ER and seen lots of things. But hers, this is going to be dreadful. Women are going to die agonizing deaths if they have to go to unsafe places. And I think we need to hear more about that, because that's where the poor go, you know, and they don't have the luxury of going to other places. But it's something that I have never forgotten. I never will forget, and I sometimes speak her name just to feel a connection. And she was 15 years old. So this is serious shit.
It is, and I've heard some of those stories too of
That's appropriate.
even just here at what is now County USC Medical Hospital, right? That they had an entire floor dedicated to patients suffering from sepsis, from their botched abortion, from their botched, this is prior to Roe v. Wade. So I would say, I agree, we don't want to get back to those times, right? So how do we build a network? How do we build the infrastructure to ensure that people seeking abortion can get the abortion that they need or want, whether it's a medication abortion, whether it's a surgical abortion? How do we build those networks of support so that also, too, no one is forced into carrying a pregnancy that they did not want or desire, right? And so, I mean, there are repercussions on that end, too. Think about, you know, those carrying children to term who are not adequately prepared to parent, don't have the financial resources. What happens of these children also, right? So I agree with you. We need to be able to tell that story. And what we are in partnership trying to figure out is, again, how do we ensure that no one, has to experience an illegal, unsafe abortion in our nation, and that no one is forced into a pregnancy that they don't want.
I wanted to just tie something to that, which is in the times of now, we have social media. And I think this is one of our greatest friends in terms of what the Black Lives Matter movement was able to do utilizing social media and how that could spread like wildfire. I think being able to spread information across abortion funds and places and clinics like Planned Parenthood, what we can do is really disseminate information and access and how you can access through social media. And I think that's a different avenue that we didn't have pre-Roe v. Wade. And I think that that's an important piece to what is going to be able to help people seek out the care that they're needing. Part of why people were getting back alley abortions is because They were just finding somebody that they could trust. Hey, how can I get this done? In a private way, in a confidential way, without having to go to jail about it. How can I get this done? Now we can do an internet search. Now I can hit up my friends on Instagram and ask them, you know, and I think that that's something that is a benefit to us in this moment.
Thank you. Got just a few minutes left. I'd love for each one of you, can you give us one or two things? Like, so I've heard this whole forum. What are one or two things, action steps? What can I do when I leave this place that will have some impact, that are just sort of like quick hits for us?
I would say talk about abortion, share your story if you have one, share why abortion matters to you, even if you don't have a personal story of your own abortion, what it means to you, and be non-apologetic as you talk to folks about that. Please give of your money and your resources to healthcare providers like Planned Parenthood and to abortion funds like Access that are doing excellent, excellent work. And if you also have time to give generously of your time to support these people in their needs as they seek their abortion in our communities, and to the providers who are providing the care.
I second that. I think this is a time that we can all feel like we can lean on each other. And I would say, see what it is that you can leverage within your own life. If you have the time to leverage your time. If you have the finance to leverage that. If anything, if you just have the heart for conversation, as Juliana was saying, to destigmatize this, leverage that. And I think that that's something that goes a long ways when we can continue to create this movement together, as opposed to seeing what legislation is doing and kind of ignoring people who are involved and who are being affected. So if anything, just feel like you have the power to leverage whatever power you have in this moment.
Thank you. And can we have those websites again? And note that the home pages of both these websites have donate buttons, and use them. So Tricia, what's your website again?
accessrj.org.
Okay, and Juliana, what's the website for?
So I will just encourage everyone to give locally.
Yes.
So there's the big national organization of Planned Parenthood, and then there are several affiliates. We are the affiliate for Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley. So I would just encourage you to do a Google search of Planned Parenthood Pasadena, and our website will pop up.
Great, thank you. And thank you. Can we give a hand to Tricia and Juliana? Thank you both so much. And I'm sure, can you stick around just to talk to people? I'm sure you just want to do that anyway. So Juliana will stick around afterwards if you're in the room. Want to let you know what's on tap for March here at the Forum. Next week, we have an amazing associate professor at UCLA, Kristen Choi, who is a public health professional, particularly where it is concerned with children and families. And she is going to be joined by Brunel Anderson, Dr. Brunel Anderson, who's on the faculty of USC, and our own Reverend Dr. Sally Howard. And we're really going to look at the pandemic and what its psychological effect has been on everyone, but particularly on children and families, and how we can, as communities, support each other. Then the next Sunday, we're going to have people from our new community care initiative here at All Saints Church talk about the structures that we're putting in place to support each other as a congregation, and also to reach out into the community. Then the next Sunday, Kenny Turan is going to be back with us in person for Off to the Oscars, and talk about the Academy Awards, and that is always fun. And then the final Sunday of the month is our annual meeting, which is also so much fun and great joy. Well, no, it's important. It'll be good to hear about what's going on here at All Saints Church. So thank you for joining us here and wherever you are, and good day.